Very little has changed when it comes to ranking in Google's algorithm. What gets the click is saying, oh, it's all different. It's not very sexy to say, you know what, we're going to be okay. New features in Google present new opportunities, but the core part of SEO is still the same. The best way to find market fit is to solve your own problems. If it's a problem that you have, it's likely that you're not that unique and other people have the same problem. But one of the smartest things we did with Page Optimizer Pro is that we gave it away for free for 8 months. AI can't do anything to help you figure out if this product is something that people want, need, and will pay for. That's where the human element comes in as an entrepreneur. I'm an expert in SEO, in particular on-page SEO. My company is Page Optimizer Pro. It's a SaaS tool, and it does on-page recommendations. So essentially, you put in a website or web page that you want to rank in Google for a term, and then we tell you the words to put on that page that Google will like you more.
So what's your background in SEO? I know you have a pretty great reputation in this space. So give us a little bit of insight into what that's looked like as you stepped in here and become the expert.
In a previous life, I was an attorney. I absolutely hated it. Decided to take a year off and find a job with the least amount of responsibility. I found myself teaching English to kindergartners in South Korea. While there, I started a company with a Korean business partner. We needed a complex website, and I had a team then of developers, and I was like, oh, I could probably general contract websites. So I started doing that. I brought my brother into the business. He does web design and development. And then I got the bright idea, all of our developers in India, let's go to India and open up a company there. So we did. We were in the foothills of the Himalayas, and we were told you're going to get a shakedown from the police. My brother was in India at the time. We had 11 employees. There's a knock on the door, and it's the police. They asked for our business papers. And they're like, these are the wrong papers. And the chief of police goes, look, you can stay in jail and wait for the magistrate to come, or you can leave town tomorrow. My brother goes, I think I'll leave town tomorrow. We fly him out of India, and we're hemorrhaging clients because we lost all our employees. They didn't want to be involved with that. And my brother, who codes, goes, well, I can take these 4 clients because he does development. So for me to pay the rent next month, I had to learn SEO that day. That's basically what I did so that I could make it the following month. It turned out I was pretty good at it. Then we started our agency. We had an exit about 3 years ago on the agency. And out of the agency, we spun off a couple businesses, and one of the businesses was Page Optimizer Pro.
Okay, so Page Optimizer Pro is still an SEO-driven platform, right? Walk us through why that works and a little understanding on why people should be leveraging a tool like this on their site.
Google is an algorithm, and the algorithm is an algorithm, and it's math. And what we tapped into is that if you give the algorithm the right math, you can rank very, very well. And it really doesn't matter the words you put in between. You have to give Google the words that it's expecting the right amount of times in the right places. And that's what we were able to tap into. So there's no mystical magic behind SEO that a lot of people try to pretend that it is. It's very math-based. And we figured out the algorithm. I wrote an algorithm, and that algorithm has done pretty well. And we've been running the tool since 2017. So we made it.
Wow.
And we've been able to survive as long as we have because it works.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So you're obviously still passionate about that. What do you say to the people who are like, okay, AI is taking over the world, SEO isn't going to be as relevant? How are we adapting to that? So it's still, I love that you position it as like, it's a numbers thing. It's an algorithm. That's really a lot of how most of the internet functions. It is a series of numbers and zeros. So what is kind of your response to that with AI is taking over the world? There's not really going to be any need for this. Everybody's using ChatGPT.
Yeah, I love those people because they clear out space for me. Everything hasn't changed. In fact, nothing has changed. Very little has changed when it comes to ranking in Google's algorithm. But the echo chamber that you see on LinkedIn or Twitter would like to tell you that everything has changed. And then people go and chase shiny objects. And that just leaves a lot more room for solid SEO to do solid digital marketing plans to accomplish your clients' goals. I run tests on Google's algorithm all the time. And I can tell you that the factors that were most important in 2015 are still the factors that are most important in 2025. It's just that doesn't get a click. It's not very sexy to say, you know what, we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
Not that much is it. Hey, what gets the click is saying, oh, everything's changed. It's all different. But it really is. It's not when it comes to the core foundation of SEO and ranking. Now, new features in Google present new opportunities. And so for a tool like mine, we can add features to address those opportunities. But when it comes down to it, the core part of SEO is still the same.
Yeah. People are still, even within AI learning models like that, they're still going to be using that, and it's still going to search the web, right? So it's really even more important now to make sure your pages are optimized, because if they are, and you're optimizing in the right way, it's going to come up inside the places where people are looking. They just may not be Googling directly as much, but it's still pulling in from those sources.
That's true. But right now, AI search is 0.27% of all search. It's not even 0.5% of all. my perspective is about 6%. And does anybody optimize for Bing?
No.
And that's 6% of all search, which is a much healthier chunk. So AI search, again, it's the echo chamber you live in. We're nerds. I use AI search. You probably use AI search. People listening to this, they use it. Talk to your parents.
Yeah.
Actually, I have a screenshot in a talk that I'm doing right now that I've got a sanity check index, and I call it the Dad and Janice Index. I call my father and his wife Janice, and I ask them what they are doing. And I asked them, hey, do you use ChatGPT or AI search? And Janice responded, we've never heard of this.
Oh my
What
gosh.
should we be using it? And the thing is, we live in an echo chamber with early adapters and people that like those types of things. But my dad and his wife are the quintessential person you're trying to reach. They're semi-retired, in their later 60s. They're online constantly. They buy online constantly. They take trips. They're spending money, and they have no idea what AI search is.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So I love that when you submitted the form for topics, you talked about how there's things that AI can't do. Since we're on this topic of AI, you mentioned market fit. So talk to me about that. What you mean by that?
Well, if you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to bring something to market and it's a brand new product and you ask AI, is there market fit for this? I guarantee the answer is you bet, buddy. because AI is it's a people pleaser. Yeah, exactly. It's not going to discourage you. It's going to tell you absolutely there's market fit, but there's no way for it to know if there's any kind of market fit. And that's where the human element comes in as an entrepreneur, and the following your gut and doing that. Because AI can't do anything to help you figure out if this product is something that people want, need, and will pay for.
Yeah. So talk me through what that looks like nowadays too, as you're trying to find that market fit. What do you recommend to entrepreneurs who are listening to this, who maybe still trying to figure that out for themselves, and they are in the echo chamber of AI that's telling them they can literally do anything? We love it for certain things, but where do you begin with that?
The first thing is the best way to find market fit is to solve your own problems. If it's a problem that you have and you solve it, it's likely that you're not that unique and other people have the same problem. And if you can solve it in a way that somebody that is at your technical level for the thing that you're offering and they can use it with little to no effort, then that's a good chance you have market fit. But in order to see that, first solve your own problem, solve it in a way that makes sense, and then let people try it.
Yeah.
But one of the smartest things we did by accident with PageOptimizer Pro is that we gave it away for free for 8 months. I spoke to some SEO friends of mine. I'm like, would you like this? Does this make sense to you? And they were like, we would love it. And so we had it on the back end of our agency site for free for 6 months. And then we kept crashing our own site. And I was like, okay, let's turn this into a SaaS. And we still gave it away for free. And then the server cost got a little too much. And I was like, I reached out to everyone. At this point, we had several hundred users. And I said, I'm really sorry, guys. I got to charge $1 a report here. Is that okay? And in the first month in June, we made $2,600. Which means we ran 2,600 reports, and it blew my mind. I had no idea that people were actually using it. And then by month 3, the project was paying for itself. It's completely self-funded after 3 months because, in that 7-8 months of free, we were getting excellent feedback from people. We were finding that market fit. We were tweaking it to what people needed in the market. And the other thing, we got our brand ambassadors. They were dedicated. We had just given them this tool that was so valuable. And then when we had to charge, we weren't charging much at all. Then we did that for another 3, 4, 5 months at $1 a report. And at that point, they became our marketing because there was the market fit, because they had a tool that they were using that they loved and it made sense. And it was helping them a lot. They were more than happy to let other people know. For the longest time, our marketing budget was $500 because it was just all word of mouth. And even to this day, we have people that have been paying us since 2018.
Yeah.
They're now paying us maybe a little bit more than they were. Although we're still on a $10 plan. We still have the original subscription $10 plan. And we still have a lot of people that are still paying that, which is pretty funny.
That is funny.
But yeah, that market fit comes from use. So solve a problem you have, solve it in a way that makes sense. That's usable for people that are in your field or your technical expertise level. And then from there, let them use it and they'll guide you to that market fit.
Yeah.
And if nobody uses it, there's no fit.
Right. I think sometimes that can feel really scary if you're trying to do that without having any kind of runway or any kind of other income, because we want to push something, we want to test it really fast. And it may not always be that there's not a fit. It just takes a little time for it to take hold. I mean, in your case, if you hadn't already had the agency on the front end and customers to try that out with, and even seeing if there was a real need for it, then it probably wouldn't have been something you anticipated it being as successful as it was, and might have just been like, oh, it's a flash in the pan, one idea that we had out of like 1,000. But it is super important. I think there's a lot of people who want to skip that part because they're just like, but I think it's a great idea, so I'm just going to sell it, and I'm going to sell it. And there's not the need, and they spend a lot of time and money on something that is not, it's not a need by the market. It's not a need by anybody, just for you.
What I think you'll end up doing is you'll create features that nobody wants.
Yeah.
You have to figure out what the core part of that product is, and that's where you want people to fall in love with. And if they're not falling in love with the core part, you're not going to build an audience out of that. And if you push too fast to get to the point where you're taking money quickly, I think you're going to build features that maybe nobody will use.
Yeah.
And you're going to end up spending a lot more money than you would have if you had just got to the MVP and stayed at the MVP for a while and let people tell you what the feature should be.
Mm-hmm. Well, and
but if you're at that level, it's hard to charge.
Yeah.
Is kind of the issue.
Yeah, exactly. So, and it's a fail fast type of a thing, right? I think we live in a time where, because of AI, this makes it a little more possible. My husband's been working on developing apps, and he was like, this used to take years to develop an app and have even the beta version to have people try. Now we can do this in a matter of like 15 minutes, and we can at least bring it to market, see if there's a need. And his challenge really is wanting to add all the features and wanting to think through every possible scenario. And the simpler you make it, the better. And you can at least start getting paid on that one little thing or provide it for free. So for you guys, I know you said you phased out of your agency. Was this the tool that made that possible? Because this was able to kind of take over and become the new thing that you focused your energy on?
Well, it was a project that we liked significantly more than the agency, for sure. It's been the most fun project I've ever worked on. But getting rid of the agency allowed us to focus. And in the first year of dropping the agency, we doubled the revenue of the tool. And it really is a testament to, if you can put all your focus on one thing, you can really make something happen, and you make something special happen. Yeah. I didn't realize how much brain energy was being taken away by having the agency and the work that I had to do there. I didn't think much was going to change. And it was remarkable when you got the principal players of the tool, and now we're all just focused on the tool, how much you can get done.
Yeah. I think that's something people get confused about. I coach a lot of entrepreneurs, and, on paper, you have the time on the calendar, you have the time, you have the capacity, but it's like the internal capacity, the amount of brain energy that's going to something we can't really always measure. And you don't recognize how much you were giving it until it's gone. And you realize, oh my gosh, I have so much more space now. And I have more creative energy and more flow that I can put into this other thing. And I didn't feel drained necessarily. I didn't feel like I didn't have time. But now I recognize I did have an energy leak there, because you can't put your focus on too many things at once. It's just not possible.
That's 100% correct. You don't realize how much more creative you'll become.
Yeah.
Like the ideas will just start to flow. Your team meetings are going to be better. Just all that, because when people are just focusing on one project rather than, because in an agency, you're focused on multiple projects, you have multiple clients, essentially.
Yeah.
Getting rid of that stressor just was fantastic for us, and the revenue growth showed it.
Yeah. Okay. So even with you guys, the success that you've been able to have with that tool and with this new business that you're focusing your energy on, you even mentioned this, having your brand ambassadors, people who have stories that are associated in a world that's filled with that noise. Something else you mentioned that you really believe in is the ability to build that personal story and that personal brand to be able to market a product. We're shifting even in, big name brands that are seeing the value of putting a face to it, having a personal experience, and having those narratives that are going to tie people to it, create more of a connection. So what's been your experience with that?
Well, people buy from people.
Mm-hmm.
That's the bottom line. And if it's a brand ambassador, someone that's legitimately using your tool as like, hey, I'm in the trenches and I'm using this thing, or I'm using this product or whatever, and people can see that authenticity, that's the best marketing of all time, because that referral is it's a very warm lead coming in.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody that I am personally aware of is using this thing and having this success, and there's really no motivation behind it other than they're happy to promote it. That's the absolute best. The other thing, though, you can kind of mimic that now with a lot of platforms through micro-influencers, where it might be a paid sponsorship, but they have a following of people that trust them. Even though they might only have a following of 500 people. If it's in your niche, that's the 500 people you want to get in front of. And that's the best marketing. That's the second best marketing you can possibly do, is through micro-influencers. And that was a huge part of our strategy to start, was for me to get on every podcast and YouTube show that I could, and to share value, not pitch anything, but just share value, share what I'm thinking about, share what I'm working on. And then if those ideas resonate, then they're much more inclined to check out your tool. You don't have to pitch it hard if they like what you're talking about, they like what you're saying.
Yeah. And even as like a founder and business owner who's running the tool, like you're here today, this is a perfect example of that, right? Like you're building that personal connection. We're not hard selling the tool per se. We're really building that personal brand, that visibility, and providing value in other ways to bring those connections.
It doesn't hurt my feelings at all if you don't use my tool. Like I would much rather you take a nugget and you apply that to your business and it's to the success that you can get than anybody using my tool.
Yeah.
And I haven't made every perfect decision along the way, but I made a lot of good ones. And if I could share any of that, I'm happy for that.
Yeah. Okay. So talk me through a little bit too about the marketing strategy and maybe even a little bit of what you guys are doing. But when it comes to utilizing those micro-influencers, utilizing brand ambassadors to really share that voice and move the mission forward, what have you found to be, even on a micro level, really successful?
So the first thing is you got to get on the first one, when you're reaching out to these people. And once you're on that one, then you can use that to leverage number 2. And then number 2 leverages number 3. And then you've now got a whole list of things. And once you've done several, that's when people start to reach out to you. You get on lists and they'll start to reach out to you, but you really want to get that going where you're a regular person. The other thing is to get there is that you need to have a point of view. A lot of people don't have a point of view for their company or for their positioning. Why should people listen to you? Where are you coming from? And what is your position on certain things? And people should be able to identify who you are and what your brand is and know your point of view. And they can sync all of those things together. But a lot of people just have no perspective on what they're saying. And then if you don't have that point of view, then you're really just arguing price. Now you're just a tool based on price. But if you have a point of view, and so our point of view is that, we run tests on Google's algorithm. We're scientifically based, we're math based, and all of that goes into our tool. So if you come to use what we're doing it from that science perspective where we're testing the algorithm, we're doing it from the math perspective, and people know that. And so when they listen to me talk, because I talk about on-page SEO, I talk about the math that goes behind it, I talk about SEO testing and what I'm working on and those types of things. So they know Kyle is an SEO tester. He takes those tests, he puts them into the tool. And so that's the point of view that we come from this science and math perspective. And that resonates with people. It doesn't resonate with others, but that's okay. But now we've got a point of view and we're not just arguing price and features on our tool. We're actually offering a perspective. And so a big part of it as well is like when you reach out to those micro influencers to get on shows, you need to have that point of view and that perspective. What are you going to be talking about? And that's in the pitch that you give them initially. I can give you topics on this, and this from this perspective.
Yeah.
And this is what we're going to talk about. And then that helps them set things up. You have better interviews, but then you also create that brand that attaches you to the product or service and then also to the perspective.
And I guess what another word that you would say fits with what you're saying is like a stance. Like I think a lot of people want to be for everyone, so they don't really have that stance that sets them apart. And you're saying like, this is what we think is the most important. This is what we think is not important. And this is what we stand for. And so you're just anchoring yourself and you can align with the right ambassadors, the right customers that are going to really take hold of that and be able to attach something bigger than just the product that you sell or the price point, like you said.
And that also gets you away from pitching because then you're talking about, why you're doing what you're doing and why it's effective. And you're arguing that point and you don't have to pitch your product or service because it's attached to those concepts. So it's a much easier thing to talk about. It's a much easier way to have a conversation about it. And you're getting to the point of the features or to the point of the tool without directly just being gross about it. And that turns people off.
Yeah.
It allows you to teach. It allows you to inform. It allows you to be a human rather than just a pitch bot.
Yeah. So can you give me an example off the top of your head? If you were like framing a piece of content or framing a conversation around this, like with what your stance is or your perspective and point of view is within your company, what that might look like to convey in messaging?
So we use like scientifically backed a lot because it's true and nobody else is doing that. I think I've been talking about like the science of SEO for the last 10 years. I speak at maybe 10 to 12 conferences a year. I tell people to steal the idea. One of the, when we started off our agency and it was me, my business partner, Andy, and now our other business partner, Maria, it was the three of us. We got the idea of saying, we know you're looking at other agencies. Ask them what tests they're running right now. And if they don't have an answer, that means they're going to test on your site. They're learning on your site. We have sites that we test on, we find what moves the needle, and then we bring that to you without any guesswork.
Yeah.
Without testing on your site. And that got us clients we didn't deserve, because that resonated. So, we're not just, and we could talk about the current test that we're doing. Hey, this client had this issue. And so we decided to find the answer, and we did. And here was the answer. And then that showed prospective clients that if they have situations like that, where it's the fog of marketing, the fog of online marketing, there's never a direct path from A to B. We have to get from A to B, but the path is unclear. Well, we can find a way to illuminate that path through testing. And those concepts then just propelled us. And then taking that into our tool. And even though like most tools are math-based, but a lot of tools don't want to take that angle. A lot of them they take more angles of like huggy-feely, we're going to guide you. We're going to be your best friend, which is great. And for a lot of tools that absolutely works. Like, this is weird and hard to understand. Don't worry. We take that away from you. We're your best friend. And that's marketing that works. We go the route of we demystify it through the science that we do and the math that we do. And so again, that's just the perspective that you have. And to your point, you're going to reach some people, you're not going to reach others, but that's okay. The people you reach are the ones, that then latch on and become the ones that stay with you the longest.
Yeah. And I can imagine it's not even like you're only attracting people who are data driven like you guys are. You're attracting even the people like me who might not be so data driven, but you've pulled me in on an awareness that there's a problem, like you're able to convey there's a lot of nuance to this, and you don't have to worry that we're not going to be able to nail it because we have numbers on our side, we have data on our side. And so I might now see that as, well, I don't even know how to analyze that data. I wouldn't even know the first thing about where to begin myself. And now I'm not even sure if I can be confident in other companies, because now I'm aware that there's a gap that not everybody provides. So I think about it in terms of marketing, where you have different buyer types, and some are very driven by data, some are very driven by emotion. And I think you're able to tap into all of those types, even though the unique angle or, the competitive advantage you have is not trying to be all those things. Like you said, like you're not hitting on, oh, we're going to guide you and it's a soft place to land, but it's still going to call in all of those different buyer types.
That's exactly right. And, the biggest thing, a huge part of marketing is establishing trust. And how do you establish trust online? I think you establish it through having a personal brand or a face of the company, if you will. That point of view, and then you have other things that establish those levels of trust. And this was the avenue we were able to take.
Yeah, cool. I love it. It's so fascinating. There's so many more people that are going to be looking at these. They're going to be listening to episodes like this and wondering, how do I stand out in these markets? Whether they're doing a business like yours, they have a service-based business, they have a tool, they have SaaS, they have an agency, whatever it may be. And I think these are really important, insightful conversations to have, because we want to have like the list of rules. We want to have, I have to do this, this, and this. And this is a little more nuance. And I think it forces you to think in a different way of how can I show up and how can I really have a strong message and understand the human connection in a world that is lacking even more of that.
For sure. And I think if you're struggling to find out, you're like, what is my point of view?
Yeah.
So I think just go through when you go through LinkedIn and you read some posts, which one fire you up? Which one gets you pretty close to a response? And then that probably is your point of view.
Interesting.
That's probably your perspective and where you're coming from. When you see like, oh, that is garbage. And why do people regurgitate that terrible information? That might guide you to your point of view.
Yeah. I will be completely honest. There's times even like conversations I've had here, and this is rare, but there's sometimes the guests we have or the people that I meet in different capacities in my business that I see on social media, but even here on the show where people will say something, I'm like, oh, I don't really agree with that approach, or I don't really agree with that tactic or strategy. And it gives me fuel and it helps me kind of plant my flag and stand in that. And I think that's good advice. If you don't know your perspective, just kind of figure out what you're triggered by, figure out what you don't agree with.
Yeah, exactly.
That will reveal where you have pretty good, strong opinions.
If you feel the stress level going up, that's probably where your opinion lies.
Yeah.
I would also say, I would caution, it doesn't have to be a one-time thing. You can plant your flag, see if it resonates, and if it doesn't replant. Like, you don't have to lock in and it's a one and done situation. You can definitely, you can modify your stance and in a sense, find the market fit for your stance. See if people are actually resonating to what you're saying. And if they aren't, then you can adjust.
Yeah. I've definitely done that too, where it's like, oh, I think that this is going to be how a lot of people are going to resonate. And you put that out there. And it's like, oh, that's really not on their top of mind. Like it's maybe a soft sell, maybe a soft problem, but it wasn't enough to really bring people in and say, yes. And I think this is something that a lot of people fear too, in having a stance, having a perspective is not being palatable for everyone. And I saw a great video that said, everybody will perceive you and you will never control how they perceive you. Two people can go and watch a concert and have totally different experiences. And so that shouldn't hold you back from at least testing out some things. Like maybe you plant your flag here and you're a little scared for the feedback and a little scared, but that's how you know you're actually starting to hit a nerve, right? You're moving things forward so that you're able to eliminate the people who are not ideal for you and find the ones who are.
I totally agree with that. And it also kind of reminded me too, you can't tell people how to feel.
Yeah.
Because you could invalidate somebody's very valid feelings. And so you can tell people we're science-based, but you don't have to say like, you love science, right? They might respect it.
Yeah.
Or they're going to have a different experience with it. And you can't tell them what their experience should be, but you can present what that perspective is.
Yeah. And it also makes me realize it's the difference between hard selling and convincing compared to just providing the service and giving the opportunity. I think a lot of times that's where sales goes wrong, is when you are trying to convince somebody they should feel or think differently instead of meeting them where you already have that shared agreement of, yeah, I also believe that we should have data. I don't want to be wasting my money or my time on something where I'm the test subject. I've been told that by people where I'm like, oh, I have this service. Like I've been thinking about beta testing. And I had a creator say like, I am not going to be anybody's guinea pig. Like you let me know and that's fully flushed out. And that's a stand.
I get actually pitches all the time like that. Like, hey, we've got this new tool. We'd love to get your perspective on it. I was like, why on earth am I going to take the time to help you get a competing tool?
Yeah.
Or like, like I'm going to dive in on, no, I'd much prefer to see more of a finished product before I'm going to spend any time.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. And I think we've touched on something really important here, that people need to be willing to try some things out, to put things out, try different messaging, and really find what your secret sauce is, right? Like this really goes hand in hand with knowing what your competitive advantage is in your business. That's a term we've talked about here on the podcast several times. Early on, I'm sure you guys realized as you tapped into this is a numbers game, that was going to be your competitive advantage, right? Like, did you try other things to plant your flag, or is it kind of pretty early on you knew that's what it was?
I was speaking at a conference, my very first conference. The first time I was on stage was in 2015, and it was in a room about 50 SEOs. They were very high level, and it was the kind of conference where you can talk to the speaker from stage. Like you can interrupt.
Yeah.
And I was doing it on a testing method that I developed, where you can do this and you can see if something is a ranking factor or not Google. And when I was on stage, it took me about 5 minutes to realize I thought it was going to be a discussion of this is what I'm doing. What are you doing? And 5 minutes in, I realized nobody's doing this at all. And these are some of the best of the best. And I walked off stage and called my business partner and said, I figured out our flag. I figured out what we need to do. And it just resonated so quickly for us. We got lucky with that. We were able to basically field test the concept in front of our audience. And the audience basically told us, we need this. And the perspective just worked. Yeah. And so we just ran for that. I actually ended up getting a patent on that testing method. So I have a US patent on that concept of how to test an algorithm to see if something is a ranking factor or not.
That's impressive. That's actually crazy. And not a lot of people would even think to do that. In the idea where we're just like, or the world where we're chasing ideas, to have one that's like so solid, and it's rare to find something that hasn't been done before. So props to you for making sure you not only planted your flag, but made it official, like actually named your flag, named your country.
Exactly. We got it. But that was pure luck though. When you think about how to get on stage in that particular conference and then to do something, I honestly thought everybody was doing it. I thought it was self-evident because, you do a Google search, like, should I do this? Right. And you get 3 yeses, 3 no's, and 3 maybes. And I was like, well, that's not going to work. And I was like, oh, everybody just must be running tests to see what actually works. But then I had to figure out how to fast track that, because you can't just launch a site and wait a year to get an answer. And I was like, oh, this is a fast track. We could do this. And then I created this method. And I honestly thought just everybody was doing that. I didn't realize I was doing anything unique until people were like, I've never seen this before. And I was like, oh, really?
Interesting.
And then that's where we were able to build off of that.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to kind of like antagonize a little bit of what we've said, because we've addressed the fact that, I've approached people, you've been approached by people who you want to test some stuff out, and we don't necessarily want to pitch our products that way or be received that way. So what do you recommend if somebody does? I mean, we have social media, you can put things out there, create that attraction content. But if you are trying to figure out what is that perspective, how can I really see if this resonates? Do you have any other ways you'd recommend people to start working with clients and they can't all take stage and realize, like you said, it was a stroke of luck in many ways. Any other tangible ways you can recommend to testing that out?
Yeah, I've always found that every community has groups. The ones that meet at Wednesday at 8:15 in the morning and have a bagel and some coffee and talk about what's important to their industry. They need people to show up and chat and talk and solve problems. And they're usually desperate for content. They're desperate for presenters, and you can be that presenter. You can contact them and be visible. And in that group of 20 to 25 people that are the exact industry you're trying to reach, I bet half of them will try it. They'll give it a go. I've always thought, go to where your clients are, or go to where the person that's doing the thing you want to do physically. Get there and be present in that community. And when they're having functions and they need somebody to go pick up the ice, go pick up the ice. Be that person, so that then I know that going on stage is not for everybody. It's a huge part of my job. I understand a lot of people don't want to do that, but you can be the person that go pick up the ice, and then that person gets direct access to all the organizers of the event or of the group instantly, and then from there, when people, you're instantly on their mind for, so-and-so does this. You need this service. They do that kind of thing. And that puts you in to their group. You can ingratiate yourself so that when you need those beta testers, they're going to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you're one of them.
Yep.
And you can get into several of those groups, and it just takes some, sweat equity more than anything. And just don't be a weirdo. And you can get in and do pretty well.
Yeah. And also don't be vanilla. I think it's maybe you haven't found your exact perspective yet, but you will be more memorable and you're more likely to be recommended by people if you're not just hard selling the service, if you're at least trying to plant some kind of a flag, right? That's going to get you a lot further.
Yeah, just be part of the group. And then when they're talking about problems they have, think about how you can solve them. Maybe those are features that you can add to what you're doing, or adjust your services or whatever product you're solving. And because you're talking to the people that have that problem.
Yeah.
And then when they need the help, I don't know how many times I've spoken to those types of groups, and then 6 months later, 8 months later, somebody was like, hey, I saw you talk at this thing, and there were only 20 people in the room. And a lot of people ask me why I take the time to do those types of things. And it's for that reason. And the next thing you know, you've got a $20,000 client. It didn't happen that day or the next day, but you do this thing over and over and over again. You get into these groups and people trust you and like you. And a bunch of them are referrals, like, oh, so-and-so saw you talk, and then they referred me to you, because you're on their mind. They didn't need your services. They might never need your services, but when they hear somebody that needs it, you're the person and then they refer to.
Yep. Cool. I love it. So it's a good blend of put out the right content, don't be afraid to network, and really don't be afraid to stand for something and find what your unique thing is in the product or service that you offer so that you can present that, be unforgettable, be the top of mind person that comes when people are hearing of the problem. Anything else that you want to add to this in your field of expertise?
The one thing I would talk about on AI, if people didn't believe me at the beginning, is that right now AI can't do SEO. It has no idea, at least in our particular industry, in doing SEO, it doesn't know what it is. AI, for the most part, can help you do something faster. But if you're bad at SEO, it's only going to help you do bad SEO faster. And so whatever you're doing, if you're, and using it for, there still needs to be the expert that needs to understand the output.
Yeah.
And so you can still expedite things and you do things faster, but you have to have the expert or the person that's knowledgeable to know that the output is exactly what is needed. And so that's where I think AI is not going to take over anything anytime soon. Yeah. Lower end jobs for sure. Maybe middle management jobs. I can see those kind of going away. But when it comes down to it, people still need to be knowledgeable in the field to understand the output, to know if the output is actually correct. And so it'll speed things up, but I'm not stressed about it at all because a lot of people don't know how to do SEO.
Yeah.
And that's evident every day. And so I'm good at SEO and I use AI and it helps me do good SEO faster. And that's what's giving me an edge. And so that's how I'm using it, but I'm not stressed about AI taking my job anytime soon.
Yeah. I see that in other industries and some of the things that I do from a marketing standpoint too. Even for myself, I know you can train your own GPT, you can get it to really speak your language. There's still going to be a time where there's a gap in that and it's never going to produce quite the same level because I know as an expert what the output should be. For example, I have built quizzes for people and to help them with lead generation. And for a while I was like, oh my gosh, my job's going to be gone. It's kind of in that copywriting genre that could be gone in a couple of years. But the more I've even utilized it for my own businesses and for quizzes I'm creating, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's such nuance here that it just cannot replicate yet. And I, as an expert, know that because I understand the nuance of what the output should be, and I know it's not there. So I agree with you. I think we have some time, and there's a really cool little Wild West moment we have where we can leverage that it'll help us speed up our output, but not necessarily replace us yet. So cool.
Yep, exactly.
Love it. All right, where can people connect with you? Where can they learn? I mean, you have your service if they're intrigued by that, but where else would you recommend they connect with you after the episode?
Yeah, so PageOptimizer.pro is the website. We actually have a free academy. If you're like, where do I start with SEO? It's academy.pageoptimizer.pro. It's completely free. If you like the sound of this voice, you can get another few hours of me on that. And then the other thing too is some people realize that they don't have the time or the resources to become an on-page expert.
Mm-hmm.
We actually have a white glove service as well, where we push the buttons for you. And for a lot of people, a lot of small business owners and a lot of small and medium-sized agencies, it's a very successful way to propel your SEO forward without having to spend the time to learn a tool and become an SEO expert. We can hold your hand. We can be your soft landing and get you through it. And so you get the benefit of all the math, and we can take care of it for you.
Love it.
You can check that out as well. We call it our white glove package.
Cool.
So check it out.
Amazing. Thank you so much for just the insight of entrepreneurship, marketing. We've had a really varied conversation today, but it's all been valuable. So I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate you being here.